Jesus, let us live out that song. Let us live out that song. Let us know where our freedom lies. And I just think, if you suffer from anxiety at all, just sing that song. That's the end of the sermon. Just sing that song. Know the truth of that you are no longer a slave. That we've been talking about this, it's already done for you, but it's not yet done. Like, it's already done for you. You are not a slave. Quit walking in slavery. Quit walking in slavery. Maybe nobody has told you this yet. Maybe you haven't figured this out. Maybe you're not sure what your calling or your purpose is, but you are a giant slayer.
Yes.
Hear all this stuff we're talking about this weekend. We're talking about our fears. We're talking about depression. We're talking about anger. We're talking about things that we can't conquer. Yes, you can. Jesus in you, the hope of glory, you are a giant slayer. Did you know that? Hello? If you don't know that, you don't know that, right? You don't know it. But if you don't know it, figure it out. You are a giant slayer. I am keenly aware that our brains can only absorb what our butts can endure. And we've been sitting for, a while, so I only have 3 pages. And usually my notes are like really in order and outlined, and today they're handwritten and they're in multiple colors and there's arrows and graphs, and so we'll see where God takes us. Some of you don't know me, some of you do. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Emmy, Beeson. I have worked my whole life as an educator. The number one thing in my life is my kids. And I was trying to think about 2 things. I can tell you something about myself. One was they gave me this microphone before the singing part. And I was like, oh my gosh, make sure that's turned off. Because you really would not want me to have it turned on during the singing part, but I really, really love to sing. So a little part of me was like, what if it's on? And I get to rock out with everyone up there. So that's a little bit about me. And then the other part that you should know, I was just thinking over and over again, who am I going to tell them that I am if they don't know me? And I just kept picturing, and those of you who do know, you may have heard me say this before, I kept picturing, do you know what a mosaic is? Like the tile, all the little broken pieces that come together, and then it's this piece of art. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's me. That's how I would define myself. I am held. I am all of these broken shards and pieces all held together by God's glue to create this, I hope, beautiful something to the world, right? But I'm held. We talked about the adults up here who said, man, we've gone through some stuff. I have gone through some stuff. I have been broken. I have been on the floor and then all scooped up and glued back together again. And in that, figured out that I am a giant slayer. And you are too. So today we're going to talk a little bit about when anxiety becomes a giant. So first of all, kind of like anger, we say, anger is not necessarily wrong. Anxiety is not necessarily bad. There are some people in my house who will remain nameless that if they did not have a little bit of anxiety, they would be the world's largest procrastinators and never get anything done. They would never, ever meet a deadline. So being nervous about some things is okay, right? A little bit of pressure to get some things done, that's okay. When you're about to stand up and talk in front of 150 people, it's physiologically normal to be a little bit nervous, have some anxiety. When your notes don't look like they normally do, you might be anxious about talking about anxiety. That might be normal, okay? So it's not necessarily bad, but there are some places in our lives where anxiety does become a giant, and I want a couple of little disclaimers here before we get into this. There are some real true cases of anxiety that require some medical assistance. I'm not talking about that, okay? So that's my first disclaimer. Secondly, there are three situations or 3 ways that anxiety comes into our lives. One is it's situational. Something is happening that's causing us to have this undue stress. 2, it's our thoughts and our feelings, which is sometimes linked to the situation, but our thoughts and feelings, when they run amok, create anxiety. And the third one is spiritual, and we'll talk about that too. And then there's all kinds of other things, because you might be listening today thinking, well, I don't really suffer from anxiety. I'm not really nervous about things. I'm not really stressed out, kind of like easygoing, mellow. So anxiety really comes from a place of self-talk. So maybe you should listen today thinking about what are the other messages I say to myself that may or may not be accurate if anxiety is not your giant, okay? And then before we start, who in here, you know me? Who knows me in here? Those of you who know me, do you know me enough to know that I love you and I will tell you the truth? My kids are like, oh crap, yeah. I will tell you the truth, even if you really don't like it, yeah? But I still love you, okay? Right? Every child who is related to me is making faces at me right now. And those who hang around with my children. Because today I'm going to tell you the truth. And I'm going to say some things today, and you are going to sit in your seat and be like, I can't believe she just said that to me. That's mean and unfeeling. Doesn't she know what I'm going through? I'm still going to tell you the truth, okay? But I still love you, and I still wrap my arms around you, and I still believe that all of your broken pieces can be held together in God's glue, okay? So maybe later in this talk I'm going to say, hey, do you remember that I love you? And you're saying, oh yeah, okay, she says she loves us. And those who know me can testify, right? So anxiety can feel when it becomes a giant, it can feel a variety of ways. And I asked for some assistance in describing anxiety, so I didn't come up with this on my own, but I'm not allowed to give credit because they want to remain behind the scenes. So anxiety could be like that irrational fear when you're home by yourself and you have to go to bed, and so you turn out the lights, and you know that nobody else is in the house with you, but you're alone for a second, and how fast can you run to get into your bed right now because the covers will protect me? And they won't, right? Somebody even said it's when you turn out the light, you know the crazy clown is coming to get you. Okay? It's not true. Oh, I have some people who, sorry about that. You know that's not real. You know that's not true. But man, that moment of the I'm alone and the lights are off and the bad guy's going to get me, like, it is real, right? That might be how anxiety feels. Or anxiety could not be like this big panic moment. Anxiety can be like at the beach. Well, no, that's not true, because at the beach is lovely and you have no anxiety. But it could be like water, right? And the waves are they're just at your feet. You know the water's there. You can feel it. It's not overwhelming. But everywhere you go, it kind of is just there. It's kind of just sloshing around with you. And you feel it. It's a little bit higher. The anxiety's creeping up. It's getting up to your knees. You can still walk around. Nobody knows that you feel it all the time, but it's kind of hanging on. And things start to happen. Situations happen, self-talk happens, and pretty soon it's not at your legs, it's not at your knees anymore. It's coming like a wave, and it's about to crash over you, and you feel it. You feel the crushing coming. You feel the weight on your chest. It's hard to breathe. You feel it, right? But you've been feeling it for a long time. You knew it was about to sneak up on you. So anxiety shows up in different ways. We use the word stress. We talk about being uneasy. I just have this, feeling that something's not right. Well, I have a couple situations in my life, examples. So when I was a first-year teacher, I got hired into St. John's, Lutheran. Anybody who's from around here knows St. John's. And it was like the dream job. The kids were amazing. They were so well behaved. I was thinking, how hard can this be? I don't know what teachers are complaining about. Like, these are great kids. And they really were. But as I got into it, I realized I had been hired into a job with 10 preps. And if you're not a teacher, like, what does that mean? Well, I had 10 different lessons that I was preparing for, 10 different activities over the course of the week, but I was a first-year teacher. So for all of you who go to school and you get a first-year teacher, they just got hired, cut them some slack, because they don't know what they're doing. In the most respectful way. They are one day ahead of you. Okay, the kids have to learn this on Tuesday, which means I need to learn it on Monday so that I can help them figure it out, right? Well, in that year, with me having 10 different things, some of them that were in the subject area that I went to college for, and some of them that were not in the subject area that I went to college for, caused all of this stress. And do you know how you feel on the night before school, like the first day of school? You know how you feel that night? Oh, you all feel it, right? So anxiety could feel like the day before the first day of school, right? Okay, sorry. You don't know what to wear, you don't know how the day is going to go, you can't really sleep, and it might not be bad, like you might not hate school, but you can't sleep because you don't know what that day is going to be like. Well, every Sunday night in my first year of teaching started to feel like the night before you go back to school. And then Friday would come and it would be like, oh, yes, I made it. It's Friday night. Oh crap, Sunday's like a day and a half away. It's coming again. I gotta do this again. Oh my gosh, I have 10 more preps to do. And the situation of that began to be overwhelming for me, to the point that a very wise mom of one of my students, who was a nurse, was at school one day, and she had dropped off her son, and she came into my room, and she was talking to me, and she was like, "You don't look so good. What's going on with you? Oh, like everything's okay." And she said, "No, really, what's going on?" I'm like, "I'm just a little bit stressed. I have this work. I'm trying to figure out like 10 things." And I kind of, the wave like went from my ankles to, and I started to cry. And she said, "Girl, you are going home right now." I said, "I can't go home. I can't go tell the principal that I can't handle." She said, "You are taking a mental health day, and you're going home right now." Well, I'm not espousing that you get a job and start taking mental health days. That's not what I'm saying. But she walked me, she grabbed my hand, she walked me down to the principal, and she said, "Emmy is not feeling well today, and she's going to go home." And the principal said, "Okay." And I left, and I probably went and slept all day. I don't remember. I just got out of there, and like this, okay, the weight was gone. What am I going to do? This situation is overwhelming. I don't know how to get out of this. And so in that time span, I was attending a ministry called Women's Aglow. And it was a women's ministry. And it was my favorite night of the month because there was unbelievable teaching. It was crazy good. There was amazing fellowship. That's a very Christian word, like a churchy word. People who are not in the church don't talk about fellowship. It was like great connection, great relationships. People were loving and kind. And like if you were listening to a great teaching and you started to cry, you wouldn't be by yourself because somebody else who saw you crying would come over and put their arms around you and just love on you, kind of like camp. And then after the teaching, there would be this awesome prayer time. And it didn't matter if you needed prayer about what the speaker spoke about or you just needed prayer about something else. You could come forward and people would be praying for you. And like the chains were falling off. People are getting healed. It was awesome. I want to go to a glow. So all this bad stuff's happening. I just had to take a mental health day. And I go to a glow and I'm going to go forward for prayer. And I do, and I tell this lady what happened in my life and why I'm really struggling, and she says, "Well, you're struggling because you're living in sin." What? I just came to my favorite meeting because you were going to love me, and you were going to hold me, and you were going to pray for me, and everything was going to be good, and you just like, what? And she said, "Worrying is a sin. You are not trusting God to get you through this. You're trying to do this all on your own, all of your own strength. You have to have the strength to do this. And you are putting God aside and saying, God, you can't handle it. You can't do it, so I'm going to do it. You're living in sin." Well, I'm a very polite person, so I smiled and said, thank you. And she prayed for me, and I left really mad because clearly she didn't know what I was going through. but I started thinking about it. Started praying about it. And in Matthew, let's see, chapter 6, verse 25 through 26. And it goes on a lot longer, but we're just going to read the shorter version here. This is Jesus talking. He says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more important than food, and the body more important than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they are? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life?" What's the first thing he said? Do not worry. He didn't say, "Hey, I have a suggestion for you. Maybe it would be better if you didn't worry. Try it out." He said, "Do not worry." And he goes on with lots more do not worries. So that got to me. My anxiety was because I was being the Lord of my schedule. I was figuring it out. I wasn't crying out to him for help and support. And we're going to talk in a minute about what crying out to him might sound like. If I was doing any crying out, it was like, "Oh, woe is me. My life is so rough right now. What am I going to do?" It was not really the kind of prayer that has some power, and we're going to talk about that. So, how do we do that? It's kind of, I think, a little bit mean of me to just say, "Do not worry." Because you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't know how to do that. I do worry. I do have anxiety. I do feel the water around my ankles. I do feel when I turn out the lights at night. How do I do that? How do I not have this anxiety all of the time? How do I talk differently to myself? So in Philippians, let's see, verse 4, chapter 4, verses 11 through 13 and 19. Paul is in prison. He's writing this letter in prison. If he should be anxious, we'd give him a pass, right? You're in prison. What are they going to do to you? Are you going to live? Are you going to die? Are they treating you nicely? You have a lack of freedom. Somebody took your iPhone. He's in prison. And so he says, "For I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstance. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength." And later he says, "And my God will meet all of your needs according to his riches in glory." I can do everything through his strength, his abiding strength, his constant strength, not my strength. Learning to have peace when I can't see what's going on. I don't know how it's going to turn out. Will I be okay? Learning to have peace regardless of the situation, because I am confident that he will meet all of my needs according to his riches and glory. So I still don't know how to do that. I mean, that's great. Paul was in jail. He had peace. He believed God would get him through. How do I begin to put that in practice? I need some real practical steps to not be anxious all the time. Well, right before that, in chapter 4 of Philippians, in verses 4 through 9, it says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on these things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. So let's look at those verbs. What are you supposed to do if you want the God of peace to be with you? What are you supposed to do if you want the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, to guard your heart and your mind? The first thing says rejoice. I'm full of anxiety. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I'm having panic attacks, and you want me to talk about what is good? Yes. Getting over being anxious is an intentional, conscious decision to choose a different path. It is hard because it is much easier, it is much more comfortable to stay in the camp for 42 days while somebody else taunts you that your God is not big enough. That is safe and comfortable. It is much more difficult to say, I am not going to accept this, so I rejoice in the fact that I have a job. I rejoice in the fact that I get to work with kids all day. Lord, I am so grateful that you have provided this for me. And where I can't figure out how to do it, I rejoice in the fact that you have strength to do it. I am grateful that you are with me, that I'm walking into this classroom with you, that I don't have to know everything about history because you know the history of the world and you create everything and you can bail me out if I need you to bail me out. That's what rejoice means. So you do that first. The next thing says prayer. Prayer that believes that you're no longer a slave does not sound like, everything is so hard right now. I don't know what to do. Now there's a moment for that, right? Like there's a time. My sister says she has 48-hour pity party. You can have 48 hours of pity party and then you got to get over it, pull up your big girl panties and get on with things, right? So for 48 hours if you want to whine, that's okay. But then your prayer has to change. Your prayer can't stay, oh, woe is me, I don't know what to do, life is so hard. Your prayer has to say, I'm a giant slayer. You've called me into this place. I don't know how I'm supposed to handle this situation, but you put me here. Wherever I am in the world is where you placed me. So you are going to fill me up, Lord. You're going to give me the strength to do this. You are going to be my peace. It's about how we talk to God and how we talk to ourselves, because the first cause of anxiety is situation, and the second cause is thoughts and feelings. Your thoughts control your feelings. Write it down. If you don't take anything from anything that I said today, that is it. Your thoughts control your feelings. And when your thoughts are, I can't do this, it's too hard, I don't know how to get through this, that is exactly how you will feel. When your thoughts are, I'm a giant slayer, I'm going to kick some butt today, that is exactly how you will feel. But we think all the time, and we do not think about our thinking. We just let thoughts just run rampant in our heads, and we never stop and say, why am I thinking like that? Why am I thinking defeated? Why am I thinking scared? Why am I filled with fear right now? And when we identify what that is, we need to change how we talk to ourselves in our heads. I am not perfect at this. I'm not like over this. But I am so much better at recognizing the voices than I used to be. Because the thoughts, mine or Satan's, used to come and I used to just take them and get weighed down by the anxiety. Now I know. When the thought comes that says, you're just never going to figure this situation out. Whoa, that thought's not right. That thought does not line up with the Word of God. I'm not paying attention to that thought. It has to go. So rejoice, pray, petition, asking God for what it is that you need, but believing that according to that, what we just read in Philippians, that He will meet all of your needs according to His riches and glory. It's not, your prayer is not like, I hope that you're out there and that maybe you'll answer my prayer, that maybe you'll be here for me. The prayer is, I know you are out there and I believe your word. And where I'm struggling with belief, you can fix that too. Help me with my unbelief. And thanksgiving. And that's that rejoicing piece. It's real choices to not be anxious because of situational things. But I'll be honest with you, in our culture, it's almost cool to be anxious. It's almost cool to have anxiety. When you go to school and people, a test is about, oh my gosh, I can't take a test, freak out, I'm gonna lose my, it's like we just, like, half the class can't handle it. And instead of us saying, yes, you can, we say, oh, I know, I have test anxiety too. And we accept it. And then we go into the next class or into the next place of lunchroom and people talk about their panic attacks. And I can't handle this. And we say, I know. I have it too. My friends have it too. Instead of saying, I've experienced that, I refuse it. I refuse it. I refuse to be the victim of those thoughts. So we have to put our thinking into practice. We have to think about our thinking. And we have to make sure that our thinking lines up with Scripture. And it is a battle. Those anxious thoughts just don't go away because you said, I know God's going to get me out of this. You have to keep on saying it. And you have to keep on praying it until you get victory. And then guess what? The next time those thoughts come, it's a little bit easier to get victory. And the next time they come, it's a little bit easier. To the point that when the thoughts come, you recognize the difference, right? This one's from God, this is not from God. So the other thing that I think is really important for us to talk about, and this, I guess, like I want to put the caveat that this is my belief. So maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I want you to think about this. I think anxiety is caused because of situations. I think anxiety is caused because of how we think and therefore how we feel. But I also think anxiety is spiritual. Mm-hmm. I think anxiety is related to some demonic activity in the world. And I think that there are some of us in this room who we have anxiety, and it's one of two things. Either it is the Holy Spirit nudging us because we are intercessors and we're supposed to be praying about something, but we don't recognize God's voice at all, and we just say, oh, I feel kind of bad about something, I feel kind of icky about something, and instead of saying, oh my gosh, that icky is a privilege because God is trying to get my attention, we just accept it and we stay in it. Or we don't recognize that there is real evil in the world that is trying to hurt us or our friends and our family. So in, let's see, what do we want to do here? In John 10:10, so this is the evil, it says the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And there were times in my life, like there was one time in my life where I was having serious heart palpitations. I was too young to be having heart palpitations. I thought something was seriously wrong with me. I was going to the doctor, I have a heart monitor, they're tracking me for a month, what's going on? They do all these studies, it comes back and they said, there's nothing wrong with you. What do you mean? I'm having physical symptoms. Like my heart is racing, I'm sweating, there's something wrong with me. No, there isn't anything physically wrong with you. The doctor's probably thinking you're crazy, but like there's nothing physically wrong with you. And I left that and said, Lord, what's going on? This began to be revealed to me. I wake up in the middle of the night around 2 o'clock frequently, 3-4 nights a month on a regular basis. And when it started, I was so irritated because I love to sleep. I love to sleep. Like if we could live life unconscious, that would be okay. I love being cuddled up in my covers. And I would wake up at 2 o'clock. I can't go back to sleep. I'll wake up at 2 o'clock. I can't go back to sleep. I'm so irritated. The whole time I'm laying there, I'm praying, Lord, please help me go back to sleep. I'm so tired. I have to get up in 3 hours. I have to go to work. Please help me go back to sleep. Couldn't go back to sleep. Finally, I said, Lord, are you trying to get my attention? Is there something that you need me to do? Something? And what I've come to figure out is that I'm so busy during the day. God probably talks to me all day long, but I don't hear anything he says because I'm just go, go, go. If you want to go out with me, we'll need to schedule it 2 months from now to fit into my schedule. Like, go, go, go. So when God talks to me, the only time he can get my attention is 2 o'clock in the morning, and he wakes me up and says, this is what's going on. I need you to pray. So during those two hours or the 2 o'clock in the morning, I was having anxiety. I don't feel good. Well, I'm not feeling good is because the Holy Spirit's trying to tell me that there's something going on in the world, and I need you to intercede. There are some of you in this room who have gifts. And you are anxious because there's stuff going on in the spirit world and you are not paying attention. God is trying to get your attention because you are his prayer warrior and he needs you to start praying. Or you are sensitive to things of the spirit and there's stuff going on in evil and you need to be interceding for your family, but you just receive the anxiety. You don't try to discern what it is and you just let it go feeling yucky about yourself. So in, let's see, 1 John 4:14, it says, dear friends, do not believe every spirit. Well, that must mean that there are some spirits for us to believe or not believe, right? Do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. This is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges that Jesus has come from the flesh and come in the flesh and is from God, and every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus. It's one or the other. When the thoughts are lies, they're not from God. When the thoughts are the truth, they're from God. The problem is, if you don't know what the Bible says, if you don't know what the Word says, and the Word comes to you in the middle of the night, and you don't know if it's a truth or a lie, you don't know how to pray. So you better be in the Word. You need to learn to recognize his voice. You, dear children, are from God, and you have overcome them. Who's them? Oh, the spirit stuff we were just talking about, the Antichrist, the false prophets. You have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one that is in the world.
Amen.
Anxiety comes from 3 places. Situational, because we're overwhelmed by something. Our thoughts and feelings, because we let our thoughts go crazy and then our feelings follow them. Or because there's a spiritual aspect to this. And some of you are being called to be on your knees praying for your family. Some of you are called to be on your knees praying for your friends. Some of you are called to be praying about things that aren't even connected to you. You're going to wake up, you're going to have that feeling during the day, you're going to talk to God, you're going to say, what's this about? And you're going to wind up praying for something you saw on the news. Because you're an intercessor and God has given you that gift. So, for me, I like to kind of bring this all home. We're going to end. I'm like probably right on time. Oh, I have 5 minutes. Okay. So this is one of my favorite verses. Psalm 118. Let's see if I go here. I have it right here. 118, 17, and 18. Remember I told you at the beginning of this that I see myself as that mosaic, those shattered pieces that have been all put back together. So I've been through some stuff. But in Psalms 118, David says, I will not die, but live. I will proclaim what the Lord has done. The Lord has chastened me severely, but he has not given me over to death. You have some choices to make. Because with anxiety, you are not alive. When those waves are there all the time, and they're rising up, and you're walking around in a body, but you're dead. So you need to make some choices. I will not die. I will not die. I will live. And I will proclaim what the Lord has done for me. When the thoughts come that are not of him, I will not accept them. I will resist them. And I will speak the truth, both to myself and to God in prayer, in thanksgiving, in rejoicing. I will not die. I may be crushed, but I am not broken. I may be bruised, but I am not abandoned. I will not die. I will not walk around carrying this death with me everywhere I go. Not going to do it. I'm not going to live like that anymore. Now, you're going to leave here, and tomorrow is going to come. And you have a choice to make. Will fear dictate what I do? Or will the truth that I know about who I am a giant slayer, is the truth going to dictate what I do and how I feel? And the other thing is, I tell my kids all the time that the definition of courage, the definition of being brave, is not to be without fear. It's doing what you know is right even though you are afraid. So don't let anxiety, don't let the feelings stop you from moving into what it is that God is calling you to do. He has a place and a purpose for you. He has a ministry for you. He is calling you not to just be like sponges to receive stuff. He is calling you to live it out, to walk it out, and to be salt and light in the world, in your school, in your homes. And you can't do that if you're dead on the inside. I choose to live. And I hope that you will too.